Hello there friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tank. My name is Alan. You guys notice how the Bad Batch kind of fights a bit differently from all of the other clones we've seen so far? I'm not talking about their aggressive and Australian tendency to jump into situations without looking while simultaneously firing at everything around them. I'm talking about the fact that in almost every one of the recent engagements they've had, they've used stun rounds. Yeah, that's why their blaster bolts move a bit slower and look like tiny little donuts made out of energized particles. Delicious to the dome. Today we're going to take a look at what exactly these stun rounds are, how they work, and why the Bad Batch sort of switched over to these stun rounds mid-season in the first season, and why it's kind of smart that they made this switch. Before we continue, a quick word from our sponsor for today's video, ownersaber.com. Today we have the Night Reaper, and it's paired with the Pixel Blade, which does all sorts of cool things. The Night Reaper is a Padawan level hilt. It's light and very comfortable to twirl around, and you can even pair this guy with a RGB light tube for sparring and dueling purposes. It's quite durable and designed to get hit hard. I like the duckbill emitter design on this lightsaber because it keeps the blade nice and snug in the hilt when you're moving around. My version of the Night Reaper does have a pixel blade, which means it has an LED strip running throughout the entire tube. This allows for all of those cooler sequences and sound effects. If you guys want more information about the Night Reaper, check out the description down below. Also, if you're going to make the order, don't forget to use our promo code PORG, that's all caps, for an additional 20% off at checkout. Thank you for your patience. On to the rest of the video. So to understand stun rounds, we first have to understand how blasters work. These are not lasers or phasers. Instead, these weapons convert volatile and energy-rich gases like Tabana into superheated plasma balls or unstable particle bolts that cause significant thermal damage when it hits an enemy. This is actually why most armor in the Star Wars galaxy is designed to shield the wearer from thermal energy rather than, pure kinetic energy. That white plastoid armor the clones and the stormtroopers use is supposed to spread out the heat energy behind a blaster bolt all across the wearer's body to prevent a fatal injury. The thing is, even when the plastoid armor works, the person wearing it still gets knocked out because of the huge amount of energy that is contained within the blaster bolt. There's also usually some concussive force from the round as well. Now, some models, especially the higher end or security-oriented models, had a stun mode. These blasters would shoot out a less dense particle bolt, usually in a donut shape. Once these rounds hit their target, it would overload their nervous systems and knock them out. Of course, there are all sorts of different alien species in the Star Wars galaxy, so how a stun bolt actually affects a person really depends on their biology and their nervous system, so, results could vary somewhat. Generally, though, the target would be knocked out after getting hit by the bolt, or at least become paralyzed for a short period of time. A healthy humanoid could wake up from a stun round within as little as 10 minutes. For others, it could take hours. Stun rounds weren't without their danger, of course. There are reports of people getting heart palpitations or irregular heartbeats after getting hit by multiple stun rounds. It was also mentioned that roughly around 50% of humans who were pregnant and got hit by stun rounds would just miscarriage. So there was definitely a lot of danger there for specific parts of the population. Repeated exposure to stun rounds could be lethal as well, as a small percentage of humanoids did die from getting hit by these particle rounds, usually from cardiac arrest. There's also the long-term damage that repeated exposure to stun rounds can cause to your nervous system. I mean, I'm pretty sure that the new Ahsoka streaming show is going to focus mainly on the former Jedi dealing, with her ailing health, all of the seizures, depression, shakes that she's getting. Thanks to all those times, Anakin thought it'd be smart to have the clones surround her and stun her relentlessly during those training sessions in the middle of the Clone Wars. And hey, for all of you Ahsoka simps who are about to write something angry in the comments sections, like about how I didn't understand the purpose of that, training session and how it saved Ahsoka's life later on in Order 66. All I have to say to you guys is, if you really care about Ahsoka that much, you wouldn't be condemning her to this slow death caused by a degrading nervous system and all of the damage her brain suffered from her teenage years. What Anakin probably should have done in the first place is not bring a teenager to the battlefield. Come on, people, let's not normalize war crimes. Idris Elba did a wonderful movie about it. Anyway, these stun rounds were very effective at taking people out. Even a Jedi with a lightsaber couldn't effectively reflect a stun bolt back at the shooter, and blocking them seems a lot more difficult and tiring as well. It's almost as if the blade wielder has to absorb the energy like when a lightsaber is used to block Sith lightning. So what you essentially have here is a weapon that shoots a projectile that has a much larger radius, making it a lot easier to hit things. I mean, you could just fire from the hip, basically. And then when it does hit someone, no matter what part of their body, it usually overloads their nervous system, causing them to get knocked out instantaneously, even faster than a regular blaster bolt would, potentially. And it's really perfect for mercenary work or bounty hunter work where you have to, capture or kidnap someone alive. But also in a CQC situation where stopping power and taking down your opponent quickly as possible, having a one-hit stun is not a bad alternative to having just some ridiculously overpowered blaster. At the same time, these blaster rounds are very hard to dodge because they expand in size. Not even the Jedi could really escape them. I mean, what's there not to like about this? I can only see two drawbacks. One is stun rounds tend to dissipate over longer ranges, so you can't really snipe people with these things. And then two, there's not much penetration with these rounds, although they seem to get through plastoid armor, which is good enough, I think. Now, it's possible that the Bad Batch, being the out-of-the-box thinkers that they are, purposely took advantage of the one-shot dropping power of the stun rounds. But I think it's equally possible that the Bad Batch just feel really weird about shooting their brothers. I mean, sure, they're mutated, but essentially these clones are all their twins, genetically speaking. Remember, the Bad Batch went on the run from the Empire not by choice, and they had to fight their clone brothers without much mental preparation. And so I think this is a huge factor in why they eventually switched over to those stun rounds. When Captain Rex gets his inhibitor chip removed during Order 66, when he wakes up, he goes the lethal route and actually kills a few of his own soldiers that he was in command of, which I'm sure was very traumatizing for him. But eventually, when he finally collects himself and gets to rest for a second, he switches over to stun rounds for the rest of the episode. The Bad Batch are really placed in a very similar situation where one moment they're walking around comfortably in Kamino, their home world, and then the next second their former comrade is shooting at them with a high-powered sniper rifle. But then I realized I remember the scene wrong. In the first few confrontations the Bad Batch had with other clones, like on Kamino, or on Selakami, or on Baraka, the Bad Batch are going loud and with full lethality with their blasters. No stun rounds are seen at all. But then in episode 10, when the Bad Batch are contracted to extract Raxus Segundus' senator Avi Singh, during the operation we begin to see the Bad Batch use the stun rounds and stun grenades, or what looks like droid poppers, to great effect. Now, the Bad Batch are definitely a bit more outnumbered than usual in this battle, so maybe the larger surface area of the stun rounds are preferable to narrow beam normal blaster rounds they shoot. Or again, maybe it took several engagements with these clones for the Bad Batch to realize, hey, this is really messed up, we're killing our clone brothers, and eventually they have a change of heart and they switch to stun rounds. And then during the rescue mission of Gregor, the Bad Batch continues using stun rounds despite the fact that it takes multiple stun rounds to take out a clone commando wearing that thicker Katarn armor. I'm not really sure if regular bolts would have been more effective. In the Clone Wars, we see Gregor wearing that same armor and he takes a lot of hits without going down. And then the Bad Batch also use stun rounds to take out the TK troopers, who are supposed to replace the clones but aren't necessarily clones themselves. I can see the Bad Batch purposely sparing other clones, but just normal Imperial citizens, why would they care? I mean, the Bad Batch slaughtered so many people during the Clone Wars. I mean, these are ruthless killers. And then in the second season of the Bad Batch, it starts off once again with Clone Force 99 using stun rounds to take out their clone enemies. I mean, I think it's a really interesting change, and interestingly enough, it also kind of softens the image of the Bad Batch, in my opinion here. Perhaps there's a deeper political narrative going on from Disney. We know that Hollywood has become increasingly uncomfortable with firearms, despite the fact that, most gun crimes are not inspired by Disney films. Besides, Star Wars has always gotten away with its weapons because they're sci-fi blasters and not guns. Or maybe this falls in line with the whole, Han Solo didn't shoot first mentality. I mean, you don't really want your heroes going around murdering everyone or killing everyone with blasters. It's nice to give them that non-lethal option. Let me know in the comment section below what you guys think. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button down below so you don't miss out on the rest of our awesome content. As usual, my name is Alan, reminding you that my allegiance is to the Republic, the democracy.